100X Club, this is Matthew, and I'm giving you the entire episode in 15 seconds. There is a death race happening at breakneck speeds to determine where Web3 gaming will actually take place. We are interviewing one of the most renowned candidates in the entire battle. They've earned their stripes, but the question remains, what sets them apart from the other top-tier platforms and blockchains? We're going to pick apart that answer, and as a bonus, we are making the entire idea of subnets so simple, even your mom will be bullish. Ladies and gentlemen, this is AVAX Gaming on the 100X podcast. This is the 100X podcast, and we have a gigantic pool of legends from AVAX Gaming. I'm so stoked to get these guys here to pick their brains. I mentioned to them off camera that the first time that I got into crypto, when I dove off of Coinbase, got onto the great big wild west of Web3, it was an AVAX. I don't know if AVAX Gaming existed back then. It was all DeFi and all chaos, but it was a blast. And I have been exploring your guys' ecosystem for literal years now. And we have been having a ton of conversations on 100X, specifically about where gaming is going to take place in Web3. I think all of us here are bullish, obviously, on gaming being a huge narrative in Web3 and in crypto. And the question has evolved to like, hey, where are gamers going to go? Where are they going to actually participate? And you guys, I think everyone would pretty much agree, are in the like S tier category of that conversation. So I'm excited to see if you can be S tier plus and get up there. Park, if you want to introduce AVAX Gaming, what exactly you guys are doing, why you're maybe different than some of the other approaches that are happening in the space. Before we dig into everything this episode has to offer, we want to highlight the awesome partners who sponsor this podcast and make it possible for us to work full-time on 100X. They're legends, and we appreciate them for supporting us. Crypto does not need to be complicated. Kadena is building the human layer of blockchain by giving the power back to the people and allowing them to build products that make a difference for humanity. Founded by ex-JP Morgan and SEC blockchain leads, Kadena develops easy-to-understand, human-readable tools and solutions that focus on the long-term development of the space, not just short-term gains. Simply put, if we want real, regular people to enter and enjoy Web3, Kadena is making a way. To learn more, check out kadena.io, follow them on Twitter at kadena_io, or watch our episode with them. Astrobit is the king of automated trading, and now they've introduced a freemium model. Put those trading fees to use. How does it work? Sign up to an exchange with one of Astrobit's affiliate links and receive at least 30 free credits as a loyalty bonus. Then earn credits on your trading fees. The more you trade, the more credits you can generate. Use those credits towards trading bots and strategies. In other words, you can create a passive income stream at no cost. Find more deets in the description below. Let's talk about Reactor, a proof-of-work blockchain that introduces a brand new economic model, deep-in mining software, a gaming distribution platform, the RKR token, and their game, Minions of Steel, that's proving their thesis by seamlessly integrating proof-of-work token mining with gaming. Through allowing players to mine with their own GPU while playing, not only do they essentially make gaming free, they make software free, and they present an AI-proof income for everyone. If you want to take a glimpse into the future and get there early, explore Reactor's ecosystem at the link below.
No, yeah. First off, thanks for having us. I know we had a good conversation a few weeks ago and got super excited to jump on and 100x our engagement on the podcast. But to answer your question, yeah, what is Avalanche Gaming? What are we doing? First off, like maybe we speak towards like the actual protocol level itself. Avalanche is a next gen smart contracts platform solution for specifically for gaming in this conversation, for game developers to deploy their digital economies on top of. What makes us unique is that we've positioned ourselves from the early days 2020 white paper of having app specific chains known as subnets for these game developers and publishers to seamlessly deploy on. What makes us unique is that we've been here from the get-go. We're battle tested, we're proven, and we're also future proofing ourselves with several key technical updates that we're pushing through. We can talk more about that, but don't want to bore you in the quick introduction. We have a list of what I would call S+ tier partners that we work with. Shout out to Caesar and the Shrapnel team. We're repping the merch today. Yeah, it was cute. He texted me before this and said, "Hey, we're the Shrapnel gear." Unfortunately, didn't have the Nokia swag to text me, but hit me on my iPhone. Several other partners that we have in our repertoire that we can dive into later. But I think, at this point, our partner network makes us much more differentiated than the tech really does itself.
Cool. I have one question before we get it. I do have some questions about the tech, but since you referenced the partners, one thing that Caesar and I have talked about behind the scenes is I've heard some good arguments otherwise, so I could probably be convinced otherwise, but I have tended to believe that people, as far as gamers are less likely to go to like the platform so much as they're likely to go to a good game. I play video games way too much, and usually I'm going for the game. Like, I don't really care if it's Epic Games or Steam. Like, I'm just going where the game is at. And you guys have some of the best games, period, in this space. I would say, like, if you looked at everyone we've had on our podcast, a huge portion of my favorite games are all building on AVAX right now. I'm curious, like, why or what the approach is to bringing those games on, what that's looked like for you guys. You told me something the other day about how, like, it's just the vibes. We have better vibes than everybody else. That's why they come here. Is the vibes everything for you? Is there another reason why these games are choosing AVAX over some of the other solutions? What's the story there?
Oh man, vibes are immaculate. They are not everything, but they are a really helpful portion of how we do business on Avalanche. I think Coop and Avery are a great testament to that as well, being here on the pod. I think really where we differentiate ourselves on the partnership side of things, and I mentioned this on a previous podcast as well, so I've got good verbal skills now in speaking to it, is our deals aren't necessarily transactional as opposed to maybe some of our competitors, which isn't necessarily the wrong way of doing business. I think everybody has chosen their own strategies, and it's best for everybody to stick to it. For us, we really believe in depth over breadth, right? We want to identify key winners that are focused and driven in finding success within Web3 gaming. And we want to just become, lifelong, marriage partners, right? And really ensure their success. So I think that's a big key differentiator for us is on the business side. And it allows for Coop, Avery to do their job at 100x pace because they're able to really dive in, be energized and enthusiastic about the content they're producing for these teams, and then everybody wins in the end. I think that's really. So
are you the one that's like dating the teams, and then Coop and Avery are making the content, marrying?
Maybe in the early innings, and then I kind of let Coop and Avery come through for the honeymoon phase.
Sure,
I like that.
That's a
for the fun.
Yeah.
Or like the partner that you want to come home to at night. I'm the one that you show off.
That makes sense. They take you out, but he's the nice, warm.
I'm courtside, but Coop gets the snuggles for sure.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to Thanksgiving dinner.
I dig it. Go ahead, Caesar.
I have a question here because we know we set the stage with Matthew's experience coming into Avalanche, but it seems like just sort of overnight, or maybe it was planned that way, we really saw Avalanche moving from everything living on the C chain to this huge push towards subnets, but not subnets just for protocols, but also for games. How was that transition like to go from like, hey, we're living on C chain to now really the push is anything that lives on our ecosystem has its own specific subnets with now your interoperability solutions having them communicate with all of that. How was that transition over the last year and a half or so?
For me, ever since I showed up on Avalanche in 2021, the vision was always subnets and app chain specific scaling. And I believe it's always been the case, but it's taken time to materialize. And so a lot of our experience has been on the C chain, but still, I think the vision was always towards app chain. And like back when we had some of the first apps start to take off in 2021, like Krabata, if you were around, the idea was to help them get to their subnet. And I think that's like part of why we get such great partners is like, this wasn't just an add-on idea once we had scaling issues or, started to reach some sort of scale. It was always the idea. And so I think the depth of the idea and the execution is just better than a lot of the other people who have since then said, oh, we're going to make app chains too.
Yeah, you talk about Krabata. I mean, I was there at the initial inception of when Krabata was around, and also when DeFi Kingdoms decided to come onto Avalanche with their Christabel subnet. And I was like, dude, this is really the way. And I think maybe you are right. You guys were really there before, creating this idea of just like having their own ecosystem on their own chains instead of everything living on mainnet and all those issues that come along with it. Maybe it just wasn't as noticeable from maybe the outside view, but you are right. That was there from the beginning.
I was going to say, I just have one tiny point to add on to this that kind of attracts these gigantic games with a lot of funding and a super long vision is one really minor detail. And it's the fact that your token can be your gas token, right? A lot of the times in crypto, like we've seen this in the past few months, we're going to see this more in the next few months. People are just going to launch tokens for the sake of launching tokens. You know, it's just kind of what the meta is. That's what everyone wants them to do. They just want you to launch a token. Okay, but that's cool right now. That's cool for this month. That's cool for this year, maybe. But what does that look like long term? If you zoom out a good bit, to help make it have more sense, a lot of the times, you need to solve for tokenomics, which is an extremely big and complicated field. And one of the reasons why subnets are so attractive is because you just bake in value for your token if you decide to use it as a gas token for a subnet. So the better your game gets, the more demand there is for a token. And it just, it makes for good long-term plays, which, as Parker said, we're here to marry you.
That's solid. I think Coop put out a tweet this morning specifically about like, hey, that's one of the winning reasons to choose us at AVAX over an L2. I'm curious. I've had this question basically since I understood subnets. As far as like, okay, game chooses to launch on an AVAX subnet. Now they're using their token as gas. I can see like Ethereum, for example. Like if I built an L2 on Ethereum, I'm using the Ethereum gas token. I can see where Ethereum wins from that, like as a token and organization. How are subnets beneficial for AVAX as a layer one, as an ecosystem? I don't quite understand that. Like if I choose to use the gas token, isn't AVAX losing in that instance? Like where is the win for you guys if someone else is choosing to use their token as gas?
Yeah, well, validators for subnets lock up AVAX. It's like a really key one. So the end goal and vision is like thousands and thousands of subnets all validating both the C chain and their own chain, and they're holding AVAX to do that. And so that's one easy way. And the other one is that as interoperability between subnets grows and interoperability with the C chain, which is available now, like they can message with each other. As it becomes just a general hub for activity on a subnet means activity on the C chain and liquidity on the C chain, or whatever chain becomes home for Avalanche. And they all benefit from being hubs, the C chain being a hub and, spreading activity across everything.
So if I'm Shrapnel, we'll use them. We love Shrapnel. We've got 2 Shrapnel t-shirts on here. So if I'm Shrapnel, if I decided to, I actually don't know their full plans with this, but if I decided to use Shrap as the gas token for my subnet, for me, I'm now winning because I just baked in a constant utility where the token is going to be continually spent essentially to make sure there's like downward pressure on it. For you guys at AVAX, you're winning because in order for Shrapnel to even do that in the first place, they have to stake and take off tons of AVAX supply on the market. So there is, again, less AVAX tokens being sold. So it is like a marriage between your tokens and not just between the people at the brands.
Yeah, and I also say Shrapnel is a pretty good example of where, they have their subnet, but a lot of trading activity happens on the Avalanche C chain because that's where liquidity is, that's where traders are. And so in-game activity is on the subnet, but trading might happen on the C chain. And so there's an added benefit to the entire network through, it's closer to their subnet. Like, of course, they should, put their liquidity there.
Do you guys think that'll always stay the same? I know like with Ethereum, that's been a big complaint that we've had is like, dude, the Ethereum vision is that like the liquidity would move on to the layer 2s and all of these games or dApps keep launching on the mainnet. And it pisses me off because I don't want to spend $1 million to do one transaction. Like, can't you guys just join the vision? Is your vision that eventually the liquidity would be spread out's a loose word there, but spread out among the subnets, or would it stay on C chain?
We're still pretty early in that, but I think the vision is that execution can happen on subnets without necessarily moving the liquidity. And that's a big part of our interoperability that's different than the Ethereum vision. Because, Ethereum's not actually executing alongside these other chains. They're all rolling up onto it. And for us, they're truly all connected.
But yeah, to add on to what Coop was saying, it kind of doesn't even matter in a way, because if we really nail down interoperability, which we are hyper obsessed over, we recently have a nice little interoperability solution called Teleporter. And for those who don't know what interoperability means, nerds might, but basically it means just how does an asset go from one chain to another, or even how does a chain communicate with another? It doesn't always have to be an asset. We've really been obsessed over this problem. We've created Avalanche Warp messaging, which is a super secure way that subnets can talk to each other. Then on top of that, we've built Teleporter, which is a really, really good UX for, you can kind of think of every subnet's kind of like folders on your desktop, right? And it should be easy as dragging assets from one folder to another, just like that. And even if you want to even build deeper into that, it can happen on the back end without the users even knowing. So if we do our job right, and I think we're going to see this play out over the next year-ish, it kind of doesn't really matter where the liquidity is for, let's just say, high-level people. I'm sure if you get deep enough and you become a whale, you're probably going to care more. But for the average gamer specifically, it shouldn't really matter.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to say, just to zoom out a little bit for anybody listening, from where my brain goes when I think about this conversation and AVAX in general, is that there's essentially three camps of people that will care about what AVAX gaming is doing. That first camp would be like the crypto native retail. It's hard to call them retail, but the investors that are crypto native, they're going to care. And that is very largely partially me. They're going to care because AVAX gaming doing its job well results in the AVAX subnet vision coming to fruition, which results in if I'm an investor, I win because of that. And I see the value prop there really, really clearly, as not just as you guys as a gaming platform, but as a competitor to Ethereum and Solana and anyone else in that space, and talking about how you guys solve interoperability. Maybe that's a future conversation. Just get all into Teleporter. I would nerd out over that. And the second camp would be specifically, and we've got some questions about this. The second camp would be specific. My hands are huge all up here. The second question would be specifically game developers and why they would want to come to AVAX versus somewhere else. And the third would be straight up gamers and how they engage with you guys. The last question I had just specifically on that crypto native retail is if you guys, I didn't even come in with this question. I just thought about this while we were talking. The meta right now feels like it is just a ridiculous level of farming, whether it's airdrops or points or engagement. There's so much farming happening where kind of investors, kind of gamers, wherever this mix of people are getting involved for nothing other than points. Everyone's hyped. We don't even know what these points are going to translate to. Very few of these things have even wrapped, but everyone's stoked. Does AVAX have any plans to get involved with, I saw the way Xterrio is doing their farming. Obviously, they don't have a token that's live like you guys have had for years. But if you go play the games on Xterrio, it's translating to Xterrio or Xter or whatever their token is. Do you guys have any plans for general AVAX points, rewards for AVAX gaming if people are engaging with all of the separate games on AVAX?
Yeah, I can tell you. I'm just going to hold my space bar because my mute button's being difficult. But I don't know how much I can give details around this question. But I mean, there are definitely intentions on our end to, one, retroactively reward users who have been participating actively within our gaming specific ecosystem. And then two, I would say, it kind of leans on how we partner with teams. And so I can speak to that. And so maybe not necessarily an Avalanche initiative specifically, but a way that we do try to really partner with teams, especially now with where we're at in the growth cycle of the game developers and where the games are at in their life cycle is on the growth and user acquisition side of the coin, right? So when I just joined, a lot of the deals we were cutting with teams was much more early round value add, sort of like investors, right? With a strategic check into rounds. Now it's like, okay, you're about to publish the game, you're about to go to market. Like, let's help you by running user acquisition campaigns. Let's help you by, throwing some dollars at marketing budget. And so while this can lean in really nicely with this play to airdrop campaign, I can speak, kind of tease that. There are partners in our network that we are working with extensively on these types of activations is kind of what I'll say.
I really do love the fact that you started with retroactive rewarding, because I was looking at, we were on a space yesterday and I was hearing how Shrapnel went ahead and did their like G3 token airdrop and some of their other airdrops. And it was retroactive. It wasn't something like, hey, we're going to announce the steps that you can do to get this airdrop, and then we have 100,000 bots going ahead and just farming this airdrop. It's like, no, we have these ideas, these steps that we believe that true gamers, true participants of our ecosystem should already be doing, and we want to reward those players that have been doing it without any sort of incentive to go ahead and start farming this. I think that's really the way that this airdrop sort of trend needs to go. Like, really just reward people that have already been doing it without even looking for an incentive in mind. Like, hey, these are the actual people, the actual users of this sort of ecosystem. Where I want to transition to next is we've had this idea or this topic of Avalanche marrying all these partners. But now the question becomes, what does a marriage with Avalanche actually look like? How do you guys decide how many wives, how many partners you guys decide to have all at once? And how do you make sure that you don't overboard yourself if this marriage is really meant to be like you're actually helping them grow, instead of just like, hey, we have 300 games in our ecosystem, but we can't really help them because we can't help 300 people at once. What does marrying Avalanche actually look like?
Yeah, that's probably for me. I think it comes down to just like any marriage or relationship, right? Is like constant communication,
this is so good, you guys.
expectation setting, understanding each other, not over promising, and then always, overachieving. And so in the early innings of these conversations, it's very much understanding the needs of your significant other, and we can just keep this allegory going.
Occasional kisses.
Yeah, and make sure you just continue to always date them, right? I think that's the thing, right? Make sure that you're keeping them happy. How do you do that? I think it's just constant check-ins with your teammates, right, and partners. Know where they're at in development, and so also understanding like our internal bandwidth. What can we actually provide to these teams from a time commitment perspective? I think a lot of teams and other competitors can throw a lot of money around and support teams, and that's great. From us, like the highest risk we can have is by overcommitting our time to a team that frankly might not be deserving of it. And what I mean by that is they're not able to actually execute on the engagement that we're providing with them. And so maybe to answer that question in like one more sentence is, set expectations up front with these teams, understand their needs, and really hit the ground running with them when it's time to go to market.
Cool. Yeah. And I would say like on a practical basis, I think I mentioned some name drops earlier about like maybe competitors. I don't know how every brand considers their competition and whatnot. But everyone is essentially calling themselves like we're a platform for gaming, and that can mean like a huge myriad of different things. What are you guys, as far as like your goals at AVAX Gaming? If a game is working with you, so Shrapnel, Meiji, Fableborn, those three have been on the podcast. I'm sure there's some more from there. Like if they're working with you guys specifically, what are you guys providing? Are you just the base layer that they're building on? So are you just the infrastructure? Are you providing content like with Coop and Avery? Are you providing marketing help? Like what is working with AVAX practically entail?
There's levels to it, but we want the primary reason for this partnership to be the infrastructure. We do think subnets are especially strong, and they need to see that and recognize that and feel that it's a big value add to them. And that's the main reason they're here. And then I think we follow it up with a variety of things, but the area that I see us supporting most on the marketing side is introductory. It's like, hey, you have something new coming up and it's an important time for you. We're going to cover it. We're going to help spread the word, get you into the influencer conversations, and make some content about it. I'm not saying that's going to be all you need for success, but we're going to help introduce that idea, and it's up to you guys from there to really make it a full success, is usually what we play. And along that way, we really have become a human network as well. Like, who can you talk to in this process to make that happen and make it a success? And so making introductions, not only on business development, but on marketing. There's a lot of marketing partnership that we introduce. And I've seen that grow as part of our value over the last year and a half.
Cool. Yeah, I dig that. On that subnet front, I know we mentioned a couple times, like obviously the using their token as their gas token is a fantastic utility. I'm curious though. I remember the first time that I talked with Shrapnel and got them on the pod. They specifically were just hyped about AVAX and could not sing your guys' praises enough. Specifically, that Mark McCurry was pretty much obsessed with what the subnets could offer them. And I think that's a lot more than gas. I'm curious, as far as we've seen, we see it, we're pretty chain agnostic. We've had a lot of different guys on the pod. But as far as speed goes, as far as numbers go, one thing that I think about all the time is I play a lot of video games that are not associated with crypto. I pretty much have told everyone in crypto at this point that I met my wife playing Call of Duty. If you somehow made a game that got even 10% as popular as Call of Duty was, it would freeze most layer ones. It would just shut them down because you would triple the user base of the entire layer one immediately. What does, as far as, and that was one of the big thoughts that Shrapnel had, is hey, dude, if we're successful, we can't just exist on a layer one. What about a subnet allows a game of that scale to thrive?
I think this is a great question. And it leads us into the other gigantic value add from subnets, which is basically that you own your own block space as well, right? There's something currently the current iteration of I guess subnets is the subnet EVM. This is what DFK is on right now, right? They process 2 million transactions a day, just through different verticals. A lot of it's just trading and in-game stuff and whatnot, which is more than most blockchains, most other layer ones. And that's just the early version of it, right? And these subnets can be tweaked to handle an enormous amount of load, but obviously we're not done, right? We're not done scaling what subnets can be. And today, actually, Patrick O'Grady, one of the smartest people I've ever been in the same room as, whenever I talk to him, he makes me feel like an orangutan. He's just so smart. I've seen him move things with his mind. He pretty much just went into an absolute phase of hacking. I don't know what you want to call that, but he just went mano him and his keyboard, and developed something called VRX, which was a theoretical way to make a really, really fast blockchain, essentially. You could just think of it that way. And to prove that he was right in over a couple months, today he came out with a post that just showed off the benchmark of what it could do. And this wasn't just a test of hey, I have this local theoretical DevNet, and on my GPU or CPU, I simulated a bunch of TPS. He literally set up 50 validators across basically every major continent, South America, North America, Europe, and Asia, and had 10 million different accounts, and pretty much just said, how fast can we make this go? And these were all just sending transactions to each other. Yep. And in real tested globally, going around the entire world, going around the underwater internet cables. So truly bound by the laws of physics, got up to 100K TPS, which is, probably more than anybody will need if they're using a blockchain as a settlement layer for their value for a game. And so hopefully that'll, get that's open to games eventually whenever that's ready. But we're even seeing the current solutions right now, the subnet EVM that DFK is doing can handle a ton.
I don't know if we said it specifically, but to be clear, you can use any custom virtual machine on a subnet. And so right now, most of them are using the EVM. But I know with Shrapnel specifically, they've explored already, should we put Move on this subnet? Should we do a different virtual machine, Hyper SDK or Verx? Some of the things that Ava Labs itself is working on are opportunities as well. So it's really future proofing, because the EVM is really popular right now, and maybe it stays that way. But for games that need a lot of speed, there are other solutions that make sense. And rather than having to go move your entire ecosystem to a whole new chain that's like a totally different network and displace yourself, essentially, you could use a subnet and stay within the Avalanche network, whatever the popular virtual machine is.
Could you put like the SVM on a subnet?
Yep.
So like theoretically, Nyan here is gonna be like, you know what, frick Solana, we like the speed, but we want to be on a subnet that we own ourselves.
Yeah, but I'm, guys, am I wrong in that?
I think so. Yeah. No one's attempted it yet. I know we're
but theoretically it works.
Yeah.
Theoretically, yeah, 100%.
That's awesome. I think that's crazy that I've not heard anyone talk about that. Do you know who Eclipse is on Ethereum? They're the first like iteration of the SVM on Ethereum. And we had them on, I don't know, almost a year ago when they first started trying it out. And that was so mind blowing to me that like, oh my gosh, you could just put Solana on Ethereum. Then why do you need Solana? But now you're saying, oh, you can put Ethereum and Solana and everyone else on AVAX. Why do you need anyone else? I think that deserves a little more attention than it's getting.
Yeah, it does. I think there's part of the reason that it doesn't get a lot of attention is that in implementation, the EVM is just still so popular. We still see most people just wanting to work on the EVM, and these opportunities to use a custom virtual machine are really cool, but people aren't actively doing it at this stage.
Yeah, that makes sense. Go ahead, Steve.
I have a question, because that idea of like what Matthew was saying, if a game like Call of Duty comes into the blockchain, it's bound to break a lot of things. Well, you guys are actually really close to bringing a game as big as Call of Duty onto the blockchain. And this is something that I've been super excited for since I heard that MapleStory was actually coming to Avalanche. MapleStory was the first MMORPG that I played when I was a kid, and I grinded the hell out of that game. So when I heard that it was finally coming on chain, and then when they announced that they were working with Avalanche, I was like, bro, I might never leave Avalanche at that point, because you guys are really having a lot of the games that I'm excited for living on Avalanche. But with the other thing, and also keeping in mind that idea of like, hey, you guys are building all these subnets with EVM compatibility right now, how do you guys' solutions like Teleporter, like Ava Cloud, are they going to have to change a little bit as you guys continue to expand to fit these different solutions that other people that are coming onto Avalanche want to have? Like if a game tomorrow that you guys really want to work with, say, hey, we just want to have the SVM on the blockchain, will that break Teleporter? Would that break Ava Cloud, or are they already sustained to build these new solutions in mind?
Teleporter right now is only EVM to EVM. Because I mentioned earlier, it's built on top of something called Avalanche Warp Messaging. Teleporter is just a framework that developers can save a bunch of headache and use right now, just EVM to EVM. But as I said, the thesis of Avalanche is to future-proof ourselves. And so everything we build, Avalanche Warp Messaging, to even subnets, we want to be as unopinionated as possible. And so maybe, let's say somebody builds a new virtual machine that no one's ever heard of, I don't know, called the Alpha VM or something completely random. And that the industry just loves it. And they absolutely go crazy over it, right? A lot of current L1s are just be like, oh crap, well, I guess that VM1 or whatever. But we could just spin it up, put it into a subnet, and let's say that, it's the best VM anyone's ever heard of, put it into a subnet, and then build its own version of Teleporter so that you also have interoperability with, the games that came before it.
And I think another part of that is Ava Cloud. You mentioned Ava Cloud, and I do think Ava Cloud is extremely important as a product because it helps people go from, understanding the concept of wanting a subnet to actually having one very quickly. And right now, it's also focused on EVM. And I think that's just the state of where we are. A lot of games do not need to mess with their VM at this point, but Ava Cloud will certainly adapt to whatever is popular and, potentially try to make something popular, add options over time as well.
Cool. That makes sense. As far as like subnets go, as far as like new games wanting to build subnet, like are all of the games that are building on AVAX, are they going to have a subnet? Should not every game have a subnet? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I can answer. Oh, sorry, Coop. I'll speak over you. Yeah, it's actually evolved over the past 2 years since I've been here. Initially, we would really urge teams to deploy on the C chain and grow, or create an organic community. It's where the liquidity's at. You can really get some traders, of course, on the speculative side, but then also real active community members and gamers. And once you reach a size and scale where it makes sense for you to move over and deploy your own subnet, again, we have AVAX Cloud to help you do that. And really, to speak to a lot of teams, ask me like, what's that like threshold level that you want to like make that transition, right, from C chain to subnet? Like, when's it economically viable? And from my understanding, really a lot of games are leaning into sponsoring gas for their end users, because no gamer has ever paid gas for trading in the marketplace. And so why would we ruin that user experience by throwing blockchain in there? And so a lot of teams are doing that. And with AVAX Cloud, I think the costs right now, in order to effectively obfuscate the end user costs, are around $3,000 to $4,000. And so if you're effectively sponsoring gas on behalf of your users up to a threshold of that metric, $3,000 to $4,000, probably makes sense for you to evaluate subnets, and if it makes sense for you. Additionally, we have several key partners in our network that we advise teams to explore for deployment strategies. One of those is Merit Circle, with what they're doing with Beam. I think they have around 20 to 25 plus games signed to deploy on their subnet called Beam Subnet. And that's effectively kind of the old pitch, right? Now, instead of maybe deploying initially on the C chain, maybe you deploy initially on Beam, and similarly enough to that, build and scale your community in an organic way, and migrate to a subnet when the time is right. Yeah, I think that's kind of the new styled pitch, and it's been working out so far. But yeah, we have to reiterate every day.
There's also consideration for like what your vision of putting your game on chain looks like. Is it just trading skins,
right?
Or is the game logic on chain? Tilt Yard is a good example. They have multiple games that are fully on chain. The entirety of the game logic lives on chain, and there's some benefits to that in terms of transparency and data availability for kind of like reducing the opportunity for somebody to cheat. And so in their case, they have a ton of transactions. I think it's like 100 times more transactions per user than something that's just trading NFTs as skins. So for them, like, there was no option. They're going to a subnet 100%. And Shrapnel is in a little bit of a similar situation. They have some really unique things that go on chain that not every game has. And so there's certain scenarios where it's like, you definitely need a subnet. And then there's some scenarios where, depending on your player base, you could probably get away with just sponsoring gas on a C chain or Merit Circle's Beam.
Cool. And are you guys helping the games and projects that are coming to Avalanche, like, hey, we want to build here, make those decisions? Or that they already come with an idea of like, hey, these are the numbers that we're seeing, where should we go? And then you guys sort of help them guide that decision?
Yes. Yeah, exactly that. I mean, a lot of the initial conversations is, where should we go for dinner? Where should we, where should our next date be? But yeah, very much an advisory perspective. Yeah, I think initially it's finding out what the strategy is around deployment, and then fine tuning it, working together to make that successful. Exactly.
Cool. That makes sense. I want to take the final piece of the conversation. We've covered essentially why AVAX is S tier plus for developers who want to build here, why AVAX is S tier plus for maybe retail. But the one piece we haven't really covered is like for gamers themselves. We play a lot of games. The reason why Caesar and I in the last couple months have pivoted from making like 100% DeFi content to going all in on gaming is because we've been waiting for literal years for it to feel like, hey, we're at a place where the games are actually good and playable and fun, and like we can legitimately participate and not just theorize. You mentioned Beam. Like I played for like an hour and a half this morning, a game that's on Beam, and I like played it, no problems. I think that's a blast that we're at that point. And I'm curious what you guys, what like specifically, what is there, how do I phrase this? Is there an experience about what is happening at AVAX Gaming that is better for gamers than other platforms in the space?
Yeah, it is what the subnet enables for a user experience. The super cheap token as gas, meaning you can just get it in the game and not have to feel like you're going to a centralized exchange and buying this random token, basically taking all of the pain points away from blockchain user experience for players to just feel like they're playing a game. And that's the main thing that Avalanche provides. And from there, it's also the partners in the games. These are games that have a really serious vision about what they could be, and they're making a great game. We don't partner with people who are focused on other things.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just played, I guess I should name drop them since I just played someone that's on Beam and in your guys' ecosystem. That was Boomland Games, I think, is the developer. That was Hunters on Chain. I had fun.
Nice.
Yeah, it was cool, man. You just brought up a great point that I've never thought about. Most adults will shake their head at this, but I have wasted so many hours on Fortnite over the last like 6 years or something. And that game specifically, like I think about the token in there, right? If I could just buy V-Bucks in game, that was like an actual currency that existed on AVAX. I don't have to exit. I don't have to swap for something. I don't have to bridge for something. Like I can actually do it while playing the game, and I'm actually buying the token itself because it's the native token. That's a huge, I would say, user experience fix that we are currently missing in Web3 gaming. That's one thing that there was another game that I was playing this morning that I was like, this is so frustrating that you guys are making me, like, I would not ever do this if I wasn't creating content about games in the space. Like they lost me in the first 10 seconds because of the user experience. And I think that happens probably 70% of the time right now. And so this idea that like, oh, I don't have to worry about the wallet. I don't have to worry about putting tokens in it. I don't have to worry about the crypto side of things because I love crypto, man. Like I have worked full time in this space for years, but if I'm going to play a game, I just want to play the game. And there is a weird disconnect happening there right now.
Yeah, there is. And I would recommend that you check out the Blitz app by TSM.
Okay.
It's one of our big partnerships. And I think the way they do it currently, you really don't even know it's crypto. And on the back end, it is. And it feels great. So I would check that out as a good example of what can be done. Obviously, you've also tried Beam. But yeah, that's the biggest thing that I think Avalanche enables that we see as the future.
That's sick. I love that. The last question I really wanted to ask you guys was specifically, and you just partially answered it, was, hey, if I'm a gamer, if I'm someone that just wants to play games, where in AVAX should I go right now? Currently playable. Don't have to wait. Don't have to theorize. Don't have to guess. What can I go explore and mess around with right now? That is maybe your favorite ones. Maybe ones that you like. I shouldn't say favorite. Can't pick favorites with your wives.
That is a hard part of our jobs sometimes. Well, quick disclaimer, I do feel that Avalanche is still heavily in development phases for a lot of these games. Yeah. But some games that I really like that are available now are Mega Weapon. I think that's a super fun game that people can play immediately. Rainy Lords of Light is a trading card game that is available on mobile as well, which is great. And then Shrapnel, you got to be playing the STX tests. So those are great.
Cool. Well said. Both of those two that you first said, I had never heard of before this morning. And both of them were tagged on a tweet we put out when I was asking about like more playable games. So
there you go.
You guys have got good games if all three of the games you listed were tagged in that tweet.
Perfect. Cool. One small one is Potopia, which is by Myria Labs. It's just a mobile game. And they're doing crypto in a very interesting approach. They're kind of taking a social-fi stance from it, meaning that you play the game or whatever, but you can buy into a guild, and then as a guild, then you can compete against other guilds in kind of like tournament style, and then you can also bet on winning teams and whatnot, which is all on chain. And I think it's a pretty fun approach. And the game's like classic, simple. What do they call it? Roguelike. Dungeon crawler. It's pretty fun.
just have one final question here for you guys. And this is more of like, we're already almost halfway done through 2024. You guys have accomplished so much over the last year and a half. I'm really starting to see the vision of the subnets and interoperability coming to life. For the rest of 2024, what do you guys feel like, hey, this is the biggest room for improvement that we have, that if we are able to accomplish this for the rest of the year, it's going to get us just that one step closer to the full vision of Avalanche and its subnets to really come to fruition?
Avery's got something that I'm pretty keen on. I don't know if you want to talk about your content hub, but essentially it's not a tech related thing, but as we go from all these games in development to actually deploying, how do we spread our brand while these games grow? And Avery's doing something pretty cool there.
Yeah, so kind of one problem that we solve is the entire crypto at the moment. Crypto gaming is just like a PvP. Essentially, it's just like we're all fighting over the same gamers, the same liquidity. There's no one new is coming to the market, and we believe that's like super short-sighted, And so, okay, well, we know that's a problem, and I mean, I'm sure this conversation is being had in every single ecosystem, every single project, the entirety of crypto. We kind of all realize this is kind of short-sighted. Okay, but what do you do about that, right? And the approach we're taking is to try and attack organic platforms. And what do I mean by an organic platform? It means something with a true viral potential, right? It's very hard for your tweets about any game, really anything in crypto, to reach outside of the crypto. Yeah. Just the way the algorithm works, right? It's very community based, and there's a lot of really great things about that. You can really make friends on Twitter. There's a lot of pros for that. But the cons is that it's damn near impossible to get new eyeballs. And so what happens if we attack apps that are on the opposite end of the spectrum, where they only want you to show you new eyeballs, such as TikTok, such as Instagram Reels, such as YouTube Shorts. And then hopefully if we get good enough at this, then Twitch and YouTube itself, right? Because, streaming platforms right now are just like, in the macro, if you zoom out to the biggest creators outside of crypto, it's all streaming. But we wouldn't eventually work there. And so I'm really trying to get creative and how do I create a pipeline of content or a system. I find some really, really good gaming editors. I find really, really good talent, and we feed them Avalanche games. And if we execute this correctly, maybe 1 out of every 20 videos is going to go viral, is going to get a new eyeballs. It gets 100,000 views, and maybe even 5 of those people who've never played this game decides, hey, maybe I'll check this out. And then you have 5 new wallets, and maybe we red pilled them or whatever. And, they can then tell their friends, and that becomes a network effect, because the name of the game right now is community. You hear that a lot in crypto, but it's a macro trend. Community is a macro trend. It's about extending your marketing efforts or your, thought virus or just like, how do you get people talking about your stuff? What's going to make them tell their friends? I want my message to not go to people. I want it to go through people. And, hopefully if we can build communities, not just on Twitter, but on other platforms of gamers who don't really care about the tech, eventually they'll start to understand it and convert a little bit. But it's a big task. And so it's probably going to take a while. We're going to fail a lot, but I don't see anybody else really attacking it super hard. Some people are, I'm not gonna say nobody, but yeah.
That's a mic drop moment. I think that is fantastic. I mean, that's something we've said a lot, that if you look at the total number of, I mean, you're kind of guessing, there's no true analytics, but if you just look at total number of raw, actual, real gamers in Web3 right now, what is that number? 1%, 0.5%, a 1/10% of regular real gamers? Like, most people that are in crypto gaming, dude, I see it all the time. And this is no diss to them, but twice in the last week, I've seen someone say I'm getting a computer so I can play a crypto game for the first time ever. And they're deep in the crypto gaming community. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't play video games at all? And what? That is the space right now, that most of the people in this space are not gamers. And so the few that are, it feels like you're selling games to that deserve 1 million players. You're selling them to 1,000 people. And how do you take off at that point? Especially when it feels like, oh, there's 15 really good games that I want to try right now, but I don't have the bandwidth to play 15 really good games. I have the bandwidth I work freaking full time playing these games, and I have the bandwidth to play like 5 a week, like effectively. And so how do you get more players? You have to get people that don't care about crypto, that just want to play good games. And you're right that I think there are very few people that are tackling that problem well. Like I've seen a couple of games doing it. I don't know that I've seen platforms targeting that yet. I think most are, and that's because of the time period that we're in. Like you said, even a lot of the stuff on AVAX right now is like still in development. I think we are far from like peak Web3 gaming, but we are at playable Web3 gaming finally. And so how do we get to peak? Probably by bringing in a ton of new players. And there's good games that are doing that. Like I've got 2 friends that don't care about crypto, and they've played the last Shrapnel STX. They don't know anything about crypto. I got them set up and they're down with playing it. Like they don't care about crypto. And I think the more playable games that are just fun, the easier it's going to be to get real gamers in. That's cool. Practically, like how are you, when does that initiative kick off, Avery?
Like 2 weeks ago.
Cool. 2 weeks ago or 2 weeks to go?
2 weeks ago. 2
weeks ago. Cool. Are you working? Oh, go ahead.
I said, but starting new channels is tough because you're kind of like entering a maze, or that kind of makes sense. We know. It's like you don't know exactly what your audience is yet, but you're gonna have to find them, and you find them through taking a left, hitting a wrong turn, going back, taking a right, taking another left, and just kind of like experimenting, throwing spaghetti at the wall, and just making a bunch of really, really bad content until your content's not bad.
And then you marry them.
Exactly.
And then you marry them. And then you marry them.
And then you marry them. AVAX, the place, if you want to get married in crypto, AVAX is the steeple chapel that you can find a bride. Apparently that's the narrative we're going with. Gentlemen, this has been fantastic. I think if you're listening and you've been asking that same question of where should I go to play games in Web3? Where is everyone going to go a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? Like when this space is actually fully fleshed out, I hope you can see the narrative for AVAX of, look, I'm not from AVAX. I don't own a ton of AVAX. I guess I've invested in AVAX, so maybe I have some bias. What I'm seeing that you guys are building is essentially a future-proof place for games to build, where they can park their game in a space that they're not going to outgrow, that they're actually going to be able to onboard users to continually, that you guys are helping with lots of at-home snuggles and dinner dates, and hooking them up. And I think there is a solid narrative for why AVAX deserves to be S tier. And it's because you guys are ridiculously fast. You guys are ridiculously scalable. You haven't broken a single time, at least since I've been paying attention. And you have some of the most enjoyable games in the entire space. And I think major win after win after win. It's a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you for sitting down, letting us pick your guys' brains, see what the heck you're building and why people should be paying attention. If you want to find AVAX, you obviously know at AVAX, at GamingOnAVAX. And we'll drop your guys' ats in the bio wherever you're listening as well. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.